Can you recall when breakfast involved something prepared in cast iron over a wood-burning stove? Before fast food drive-thrus and microwaves transformed everything, mountain communities began their mornings with substantial meals that could power a complete day of demanding labor. Today, we're diving into 25 traditional hillbilly breakfasts that have nearly vanished from modern tables: chocolate gravy and biscuits. Let's begin with chocolate gravy and biscuits. This sweet morning delicacy from the Ozarks and Appalachian territories converted breakfast into dessert well before anyone conceived of chicken and waffles. Created from cocoa powder, sugar, flour, and milk, this decadent gravy was whisked together in a cast-iron skillet until dense and shiny. Mountain families would spoon it abundantly over hot, flaky biscuits, straight from the oven. The custom originated in the early 1900s when cocoa became economical enough for special celebrations. Kids would plead with their grandmothers to prepare it on frigid Saturday mornings. Some families incorporated a chunk of butter for additional richness, while others favored a splash of vanilla. By the 1970s, as health awareness increased and traditional cooking diminished, chocolate gravy became progressively uncommon. Today, only a few old-fashioned restaurants still offer this sweet reminder of simpler eras. Redeye gravy ham biscuits. If you've never experienced redeye gravy, you've overlooked one of the South's most brilliant creations. This thin, coffee-infused gravy emerged when creative cooks deglazed ham drippings with remaining coffee. The name derived from the red ring that appeared when the coffee touched the grease. Country ham, salt-cured and aged for months, would be sliced thinly and fried until the edges twisted. Then came the enchantment. A splash of robust black coffee into the hot pan, producing a sauce that was equally salty, smoky, and mildly bitter. Poured over separated biscuits with ham nestled inside, it created a breakfast that could fuel a farmer through morning tasks. Some included a hint of brown sugar to counterbalance the bitterness. The tradition traces back to Andrew Jackson's period in the 1830s. As country hams became scarcer and coffee makers displaced percolators, this historic breakfast gravy almost disappeared from American tables. Tomato gravy on biscuits. Well before marinara sauce dominated America, mountain cooks were preparing tomato gravy for breakfast. This tangy invention began with bacon drippings. Nothing was discarded in a hillbilly kitchen. Flour was incorporated into the hot fat to create a roux. Then home-canned tomatoes were introduced with their liquid. The blend bubbled and thickened while the cook flavored it with salt, pepper, and occasionally a pinch of sugar to reduce the acidity. Fresh tomatoes worked in summer, but canned ones made this a year-round essential. The outcome was a pink-orange gravy that appeared unusual but tasted magnificent over hot biscuits. Some families crumbled remaining bacon into the gravy for additional flavor. This dish was particularly popular during the Depression, when a jar of tomatoes could extend a meal. The tradition was most prominent in Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Modern breakfast patterns and the emergence of instant foods relegated tomato gravy into obscurity by the 1980s. Bulldog gravy with biscuits. When circumstances became difficult in Appalachia, cooks became inventive with bulldog gravy, a meatless adaptation that could nourish a crowd on pennies. Also called poor do or poverty gravy, it contained just flour, grease, water or milk, salt, and pepper. The name supposedly originated from it being dog rough or hard times food. Despite its modest ingredients, talented cooks could make it taste substantial and satisfying. The secret was browning the flour carefully in bacon drippings or lard until nutty and golden. Then liquid was incorporated gradually to prevent lumps. Some added an onion to the grease for flavor, extracting it before making the roux. During the Great Depression, this gravy kept numerous families fed when meat was a luxury. Mothers would prepare extra biscuits, knowing the gravy could transform them into a filling meal. The tradition persisted through the 1960s in impoverished mountain communities. Today's abundance makes bulldog gravy appear like deprivation, but it represents the ingenuity of our ancestors. Cornmeal gravy and biscuits. Before wheat flour was prevalent in the mountains, cornmeal gravy dominated breakfast tables. This early adaptation of sawmill gravy utilized stone-ground cornmeal as a thickening agent, producing a slightly gritty consistency that mountain folks cherished. Bacon or sausage drippings formed the foundation, with cornmeal stirred in slowly to prevent clumping. The gravy cooked until thick and creamy with milk or cream incorporated for richness. The corn flavor contributed a subtle sweetness that complemented perfectly with salty meat drippings. Some cooks added crumbled sausage or bacon back into the completed gravy. This was especially favored in regions where grist mills were more abundant than wheat flour mills. The yellow-tinted gravy appeared different from white sawmill gravy, but tasted equally satisfying over hot biscuits. Old-timers insisted it stuck to your ribs better than flour gravy. As commercial white flour became cheaper and more accessible after World War II, cornmeal gravy gradually vanished from most kitchens. Sorghum long, sweetening on biscuits. In mountain valleys where sugar was limited and costly, sorghum syrup supplied the sweetness for countless breakfasts. Called long sweetening to differentiate it from granulated short sweetening. This dark molasses-like syrup originated from pressing sorghum canes. Families would reserve their finest biscuits for sorghum, splitting them open while hot and adding a pat of butter before drizzling the amber syrup into every crevice. The blend of flaky biscuit, melting butter, and earthy sweet sorghum produced a flavor that store-bought pancake syrup could never replicate. Making sorghum was a community occasion each fall, with neighbors assembling at the mill to assist processing the cane. A family's annual supply would be stored in jugs and utilized sparingly. Some blended sorghum with butter to create sorghum butter for simpler spreading. Children mastered wiping their plates clean with the final bite of biscuit. As inexpensive corn syrup flooded the market in the 1960s, traditional sorghum production nearly stopped. Cornbread and milk. Nothing demonstrated the frugality of hillbilly cooking quite like crumble in, yesterday's leftover cornbread crumbled into a bowl of cold milk. This simple dish converted potential waste into a satisfying breakfast. The cornbread, ideally a day or two old, would be broken into bite-sized pieces in a bowl or glass. Cold buttermilk was the traditional selection, its tanginess complementing the corn sweetness, though sweet milk functioned too. Consumed with a spoon like cereal, it provided a quick, filling start to the day. Some folks added a drizzle of sorghum or honey for extra sweetness. Others preferred it with green onions for a savory variation. The practice was so widespread that many families baked additional cornbread specifically for morning crumble-in. During summer, the cold milk made it refreshing in homes without refrigeration. This tradition lasted well into the 1970s in rural regions. Today's abundance of commercial cereals made this economical breakfast obsolete, though some Southerners still crave it for comfort. Fried cornmeal mush. Before instant oatmeal conquered America's breakfast tables, fried mush was the hot cereal of preference in Appalachian homes. The process began the night before, cooking cornmeal with water and salt until thick as concrete, then pouring it into a loaf pan to chill. Come morning, the solid mush was sliced like bread and fried in bacon grease or lard until golden and crispy outside while creamy inside. The contrast of textures made it irresistible. Some families served it with sorghum syrup or maple syrup like pancakes. Others treated it as a meat alternative, serving it alongside eggs and bacon. The thrifty could extend it further by incorporating leftover meat scraps to the mush before chilling. This filling breakfast could sustain hard-working folks until the midday meal. Pennsylvania Dutch called it scrapple when meat was included. The tradition traced back to colonial times, but diminished as convenience foods took over. By the 1980s, few young cooks understood how to make proper fried mush. Buckwheat cakes. In the mountains of West Virginia and western Maryland, buckwheat cakes were the pancake of preference for generations. These weren't your fluffy modern pancakes. They were thin, tangy, and slightly sour from overnight fermentation. The batter began with buckwheat flour, water, and a bit of save batter from the previous batch as a starter, similar to sourdough. Left on the rear of the stove overnight, wild yeasts would perform their magic. Morning brought thin, lacy cakes with a distinctive earthy flavor that paired perfectly with sausage and molasses. The initial batch was always for the cook to test and adjust the batter. Some families maintained their starter going for decades, passing it down like an heirloom. The cakes cooked rapidly on a hot griddle, bubbling and browning in seconds. Fresh churned butter melted into the stack, while sorghum or maple syrup crowned the top. As commercial pancake mixes emerged in the 1950s, the craft of buckwheat cake making nearly vanished. Cathead biscuits. These oversized drop biscuits earned their name from being as large as a cat's head, and they were designed for serious eating. Unlike rolled and cut biscuits, catheads were made by dropping huge spoonfuls of wet dough directly onto the baking sheet. The outcome was a rustic, craggy-topped biscuit with numerous nooks for capturing gravy. A single cathead could be a meal by itself when split and loaded with sausage gravy or ham. The extra wet dough produced a tender, fluffy interior that remained moist even as leftovers. Mountain cooks made them when time was limited, no rolling pin or biscuit cutter required. Some added extra lard or butter to make them even richer. The irregular shape meant every biscuit was distinctive with crispy peaks and soft valleys. They were perfect for soaking up every drop of redeye gravy or egg yolk. Restaurants sometimes called them angel biscuits when yeast was incorporated. Modern portion control and neat presentation removed these giants from most menus by the 1990s. Salt-rising bread toast. If you've never smelled salt-rising bread baking, you've missed one of Appalachia's most divisive aromas. This yeast-free bread relied on wild bacteria for leavening, producing a distinctive cheese-like smell that people either loved or hated. The starter began with cornmeal, milk, and salt, kept warm overnight until foamy and pungent. Making it required skill and precise temperatures. Too cool and it wouldn't rise, too hot and it died. The resulting bread had a dense, moist crumb and complex flavor unlike any other. Sliced thick and toasted in a skillet with butter, it made a substantial breakfast foundation. Some topped it with apple butter or jam, while others preferred it plain to appreciate the unique taste. The bread stayed fresh, longer than yeast breads, important in homes without refrigeration. Bakers protected their techniques carefully, as each kitchen's wild bacteria generated slightly different flavors. Commercial yeast and modern baking methods nearly eliminated this ancient art by the 1970s. Liver mush with eggs and grits. Western North Carolina's response to scrapple, liver mush combined pork liver, head meat, and cornmeal into a firm loaf that became a breakfast staple. Sliced thick and fried until crispy outside, it delivered a rich, savory punch that complemented scrambled eggs and creamy grits perfectly. The tradition originated with German settlers who brought similar recipes from the old country. Each small town had its own liver mush maker with a secret spice blend. Some liked it mild, others added red pepper for heat. The cornmeal provided its structure and stretched the meat further, important when feeding large families. Friday night meant slicing Saturday's breakfast from the fresh loaf. The aroma of liver mush frying could wake the entire house. Some consumed it on biscuits like a sandwich, others crumbled it into their grits. Health concerns about organ meats and changing tastes pushed liver mush to the margins. Today, only a few traditional producers keep this regional breakfast meat alive in the Piedmont region. Fried bologna and egg sandwich. Before gourmet breakfast sandwiches, mountain folks were stacking fried bologna and eggs between white bread or biscuits. This wasn't thin deli bologna. We're talking thick-cut rounds from the country store, sliced half an inch thick. The key was scoring the edges so it wouldn't cup up in the skillet. Fried until the edges were crispy and the center was hot, it developed a caramelized crust. A fried egg with a runny yolk went on top, maybe a slice of American cheese, all between toasted white bread or inside a warm biscuit. Some added mustard or mayo, others liked it plain. The combination of salty meat, rich egg yolk, and soft bread created the perfect handheld breakfast. Gas station stores across Appalachia sold them wrapped in wax paper. Factory workers grabbed them on the way to early shifts. As fast food chains expanded in the 1980s, homemade bologna and egg sandwiches became less common. Fried hominy with bacon and eggs. Long before grits became the standard, whole kernel hominy provided the starch for mountain breakfasts. These large, puffy corn kernels had been treated with lye to remove the hulls, creating a unique texture and flavor. Drained from the jar and fried in bacon grease with chopped onions, hominy developed crispy edges while staying tender inside. The bacon grease was crucial. It added smoky flavor that plain oil couldn't match. Some cooks added crumbled bacon back in, others kept it simple. Served alongside eggs and bacon, fried hominy was filling and economical. A jar could stretch to feed a large family when times were tight. The alkaline treatment that created hominy also added calcium and made nutrients more available. Some families grew and processed their own hominy, a labor-intensive process that took days. As instant grits became widely available and food processing moved away from homes, fried hominy largely disappeared from breakfast tables by the 1970s. Hoe cakes. These simple cornmeal pancakes got their name from being cooked on hoe blades over open fires, though by the 20th century, cast iron griddles had taken over. The batter was basic, just cornmeal, salt, and water, maybe an egg if times were good. Thin as crepes and crispy around the edges, hoe cakes were the everyday pancake of the rural South. Some cooks added buttermilk for tang, others stuck with water for economy. The key was getting the griddle hot enough to create a crispy crust while keeping the inside tender. Small, palm-sized cakes cooked quickly and could be stacked high. Butter and syrup were luxuries. Many ate them plain or with a drizzle of sorghum. They paired perfectly with fried fish or salt pork. Children learned to flip them early, practicing on the back porch. Unlike wheat pancakes that required expensive flour, hoe cakes used affordable cornmeal available from local mills. Modern pancake mixes pushed these heritage cakes to near extinction. Hot water, cornbread. This emergency bread demonstrated the ingenuity of cooks who could make something from almost nothing. Unlike regular cornbread that required eggs and milk, hot water cornbread needed just cornmeal, salt, and boiling water. The boiling water partially cooked the cornmeal, creating a mixture that could be shaped by hand. Formed into small patties and fried in hot oil, they developed a crunchy exterior and creamy interior. The texture was completely different from baked cornbread, denser and more satisfying. Some cooks added a touch of sugar, others included finely diced onions. The hand shaping meant no two were exactly alike, with crispy, thin edges prized by children. These could be made quickly when unexpected company arrived or when supplies ran low. Served hot from the skillet, they needed no butter or topping. The simplicity meant even young cooks could master them. As prosperity increased and ingredients became plentiful, this survival food faded from regular rotation. Fried apples with biscuits. When autumn brought bushels of apples to mountain homesteads, fried apples became a breakfast staple that lasted through winter. Thick slices of tart apples went into a cast-iron skillet with butter, cinnamon, and brown sugar or sorghum. Cooked until tender but not mushy, they created their own cinnamon-sweet syrup. The smell could draw sleepy children from bed faster than any alarm clock. Some families used bacon grease instead of butter for a sweet-savory combination that sounds strange but tasted amazing. These weren't dessert. They were a side dish like hash browns, served alongside eggs and meat. The natural pectin in the apples thickened the syrup perfectly. Mixed varieties created complex flavors, tart Granny Smiths with sweet red delicious. Spooned over split biscuits, they made a complete meal. Home canning kept the tradition alive year-round. As fresh fruit became available year-round in supermarkets, the seasonal ritual of fall apple frying gradually ended. Fried apple hand pies. Before toaster pastries existed, mountain cooks made portable breakfast sweets from dried apples and leftover biscuit dough. These fried pies, or apple jacks, started with dried apples simmered until soft, then mashed with sugar and spices. The filling was enclosed in rounds of dough, edges crimped tight, then deep-fried until golden. The result was a crispy shell holding molten apple filling, dangerous to eat too quickly, but impossible to resist. Unlike baked pies that required an oven, these cooked quickly in a pot of hot lard on the stove. Wrapped in brown paper, they traveled well in lunch pails and coat pockets. Some families had special crimping patterns that identified the cook. The dried apples concentrated the flavor, making them sweeter than fresh apple pies. Summer might bring peach or blackberry versions, but apple remained king. Commercial snack foods and concerns about deep frying pushed these handheld treasures toward extinction by the 1980s. Grits with redeye gravy. While most folks sweetened or buttered their grits, mountain cooks discovered that redeye gravy transformed humble hominy grits into something special. The bitter coffee notes in the gravy played against the mild corn flavor of the grits, creating an unexpectedly harmonious combination. Plain grits were cooked thick and creamy, then a depression was made in the center to hold the thin gravy. The first spoonful mixing gravy and grits together was a revelation, salty, slightly bitter, and deeply satisfying. Some added crumbled bacon or country ham to the bowl. This wasn't a dish for those who liked sweet breakfasts. It was serious fuel for serious work. The combination provided complex flavors without expensive ingredients. Old-timers claimed it could cure a hangover or wake the dead. The ritual of making both components perfectly took practice and patience. As instant grits replaced slow-cooked varieties and coffee makers eliminated percolator dregs, this classic combination nearly vanished from southern tables. Clabber with cornbread or molasses. Before refrigeration, milk that soured wasn't discarded. It became clabber, a thick yogurt-like food that mountain folks ate for breakfast. The natural bacteria in raw milk would thicken it into curds and whey if left at room temperature. Unlike buttermilk, which was churned, clabber formed naturally. Eaten from bowls like cottage cheese, it had a tangy, slightly fizzy quality. Crumbled cornbread stirred in added substance and sweetness. A drizzle of sorghum or molasses on top balanced the sourness perfectly. Some preferred it with preserves or fresh berries when available. The probiotics in clabber aided digestion, though nobody called them that back then. Making good clabber required the right temperature and timing. Too warm and it separated, too cool and it wouldn't set. Each family's clabber tasted different depending on their cows and kitchen conditions. Pasteurization laws and refrigeration ended this ancient practice by the 1960s in most areas. Thanks for accompanying us on this journey down memory lane, exploring these 25 forgotten breakfast traditions. If you appreciated the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.